Welcome to Visa Spotlight, a podcast by Visa that shines a light on the most exciting developments in the payments landscape right now, while also giving you a glimpse into what the future holds for us all.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Visa Spotlights, our podcast where we explore the latest trends and developments happening in payments, commerce and money movement across Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa. I'm joined today by Godfrey Sullivan, who leads products, solutions and digital partnerships for our region and has a team working with more than 1,000 clients across 80 plus markets where Visa operates. We are going to explore some of the biggest trends and some of the shifts that are driving the product and innovation agenda across CEMEA, and some of the work that Godfrey's team of engineers, solution architects and designers are doing within the region. Godfrey, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be here.
So Godfrey, there's an incredible amount of exciting developments happening within the payments world and across our region and globally. Could you give a bit of context perhaps in terms of the approach that your team is taking and where you're really focused at the moment?
Absolutely. Over the last 5 years, globally, we've probably seen more innovation in the payment space than we have over the preceding 50 years. And I think within our CEMEA region, we've probably seen more change in the last 3 years than we have in the last 50 years. There's so much innovation and we're working harder and harder to keep up with that innovation and indeed lead it. What we've been focused on particularly is solving the big customer pain points, the challenges of authenticating online, the different range of payment options that people have to use. How can we simplify that for customers? The challenges that merchants have around accepting payments, particularly the small merchants. And then as new payment systems evolve, how can we leverage the capabilities that we have built over decades to ensure that those payment mechanisms can benefit from the security and risk management capabilities that we have developed? So there's lots and lots going on.
Interesting. And despite all the rapid digitization and the payments progress we've seen over the last few years, as you said, there are a number of areas where work is still required, both as Visa and as a wider industry, in terms of improving that experience. And I think maybe we could look at sort of each of the different audiences and different payment methods in turn. Let's start with consumer. So obviously digital identity and the e-commerce experience is absolutely critical within payments. Could you talk a little around one of the innovations, payment PassKey, which I know we've just announced?
Very good question. There is a challenge in the e-commerce environment around how do you identify a human in the digital world? And it sounds like a simple exercise, but it's actually incredibly difficult. And what we have developed is something called Visa PassKeys. So this is a way in which in the e-commerce experience, we can link in the face identification and authentication that is done every day through your mobile device, linking that into online digital payments. This is extremely beneficial for consumers because it will just make the checkout experience that much more seamless. It's also beneficial for merchants because the degree of fraud, which is today a real challenge for many of our merchants, can be dramatically reduced by the use of face identification or indeed fingerprint or authentication in our online digital world.
So that's really interesting, and that's around the sort of the digital identity and knowing you are you from a merchant or financial institution perspective, and is obviously part of the e-commerce experience. Now, we've seen e-commerce grow at a phenomenal pace over the recent years. It sort of started before COVID, accelerated during the pandemic, and then has sort of continued afterwards. And while I think e-commerce is part of all of our everyday lives, the experience doesn't always quite deliver, does it? Particularly when we go to the guest checkout on new websites and new merchants that we perhaps haven't shopped with before. How are we thinking about solving that and improving that experience for consumers?
That is so true, Dan. It is still a clunky experience. You go to a guest checkout, you take your card and you type in your 16-digit PAN number. If you have your card to hand, And it's a clunky experience, and it needs to be improved for a digital environment. So what we have done is launch something called Click to Pay. Click to Pay is a way in which, as you go to a guest checkout for a Click to Pay enabled merchant, all you will need to do is enter in either your mobile number or your email address. And as you enter that in, it will bring up the Visa credentials that you have registered to that particular mobile number. And then you select which credential you want to pay with and simply check out. It is an altogether simpler process, but not only that, we're making it incredibly simple so that the consumer doesn't actually have to sign up to this process. So we're working with our many issuing partners so that they will load the credentials and the linked mobile number and email address into the secure Visa alias directory, so that you as a consumer will not have to do anything. Where you see the Click to Pay logo on a merchant, you will just enter in your mobile or your email address and be able to seamlessly check out.
Yeah, so that'll really rapidly speed up the whole sort of checkout process, won't it? And I think it will also mean when you're at a new merchant's online site, you don't need to actually have your card present or a really good memory to remember the card number, which I'm not sure I always have.
Absolutely. And as we combine it with Visa PassKeys, it will mean that the checkout experience is just as seamless as the offline shopping experience today, where you tap and you pay with the Face ID.
Great. So we've covered a lot on the benefits for consumers there. What does Click to Pay mean for merchants in the region?
So as we've talked about, the payment experience online for merchant is filled with challenges. There's high abandonment rates as consumers deal with these clunky experiences. There is loyalty, which is perhaps impacted by a less than optimal payment experience. So what we've seen with Click to Pay is that it can reduce the abandonment rate for merchants. It increases the loyalty that consumers have with those merchants. It's just an easier way to check out. And also it removes the considerable burden for many merchants who have to store cards on file and all the security consideration and risks that come with that. With the Click to Pay, this is an easier way for those challenges to be overcome. So net, it's a real win for merchants as well.
Excellent. So that's all around the e-commerce experience. I know one of the other areas that we're focused on for consumers is providing more choice and thinking about how we reinvent the card, which is in many ways sort of stayed pretty consistent over the last 70 years or so, and bring it into a digital era where consumers have more choice and more flexibility with their single credential. Perhaps you could talk about that.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. The card has really not evolved over the last 70 years. And what has happened is people have developed new types of cards. So now we have a wallet with different types of cards. We have a debit card, we have a credit card. Maybe we would like to pay in installments. Maybe we have a loyalty card with reward points on it. So we have a whole plethora of cards. But when it comes to a digital environment, we have one mobile phone. And so as we've been thinking about the future of payments, we've thought, how can we combine the multiple credentials into a single digital experience that when you go to pay, you don't have to rummage around for a variety of different cards. You can simply decide whether you want to use this as a debit transaction from the money you have, whether you want to use it as a credit transaction, potentially borrowing from your bank, whether you want to pay with points, whether you want to pay with a different currency, all in the same Visa Flex credential.
Excellent. So we'll have one card which you can pay from your debit regular account. You can make credit transactions on, you can pay in installments, or ultimately pay with points as well. So lots of different options, and multi-currency, of course, as well. So we've spoken around a couple of the innovations that are happening on the consumer side. Obviously, across SMEA, probably more than anywhere in the world, there's a real drive and need to improve the payment experience for merchants as well. We've got many merchants across the region. I think there's 60 million formal merchants and 60 million informal merchants that still don't accept digital payments compared to the 11 million that currently do. So how are you and your team sort of thinking about what we can do to bring those merchants into the digital fold?
This is a really important area. One of the trends we've seen over the last 5 years is it's just become easier to set up a business. The technology is more available. Social media platforms are enabling the formation of new companies. And we've seen a real explosion in just the sheer number of small businesses available. And we need to have payment solutions that cater for their needs. And so as we've thought about this challenge, we have 335 million Visa credentials across the CEMEA region. And so we thought, what if we turn each of these credentials into a way in which a merchant can accept payments as well as make payments? And so this is what we're calling our nano merchant acceptance, where we're going to transform every payment credential across the region into an acceptance device. And we're going to combine this with mobile technology. So within your phone, you will be able to have a Visa credential that will be not only a way to pay, but also a way to receive payments, transforming the acceptance landscape and rapidly growing from the 11 million merchants in CEMEA which accept payments today to a much greater number, targeting that 120 formal and informal merchants that we have.
Great. And I think one of the most exciting developments around that is the fact that we're not just looking at smartphones where we have tap-to-phone technology and the tech's slightly more advanced, but also feature phones and making those USSD push payments, which are addressing the needs of so many of the small merchants that we've got in many of our markets across CEMEA as well.
Indeed, CEMEA is an incredibly diverse region. There are many markets where USSD technology on feature phones is still a really important part of daily life. And we need to ensure that as we think about nano merchant acceptance, we do that not only for the smartphones, but also for the basic feature phone devices. And that's exactly the innovation that we're leading.
So you spoke earlier around the pace of change and innovation that's happening across the payments landscape within CEMEA. And the nature of different payments and money movement has obviously evolved significantly. One of the big areas that we're seeing is around account to account, which is emerging and gaining popularity across a number of different markets. I know Visa has obviously had trust and security as the cornerstone of our business for the last 60 years that we've been present across CEMEA. How are we applying some of that heritage and legacy around security to the emerging world of A2A payments?
You're absolutely right. Security has been the cornerstone of Visa for decades. And in that, we have learned an enormous amount about how to secure payments. And with the development of account-to-account networks around the world, we have had many central banks and payment companies reaching out to us and saying, look, we have high levels of fraud. How can you help us deal with this? How can we leverage this decades of experience and apply that to our new government-led payments networks? And so this is exactly what we've been working on. We do 200 billion transactions a year. And there is an enormous amount that we know around how to ensure that when a transaction is a valid transaction or when it's a fraudulent transaction. So our Visa Protect for A2A is taking that expertise and applying it to account-to-account platforms. And what we've seen is that previously undetected fraud transactions, we've been able to increase the rate of fraud detection by up to 60%, which is a huge impact, giving greater security to customers and particularly for merchants. So it's a super exciting development for us.
Excellent. So we've covered a lot of ground already, and we've spoken around innovations for consumers, for merchants, and within A2A transactions as well. I mean, that's a lot. And it's a lot for many of our clients and financial institutions across the region to get their heads around and focus their teams on. How are we thinking about the nature of partnership and the way in which we bring solutions together for clients to simplify the process of adopting many of these exciting new technologies?
If you're leading technology for one of the 1,600 issuing banks across the CEMEA region that Visa works with, it's a daunting challenge. The rate of innovation is incredibly difficult to keep up with. You also have the regulatory requirements that you need to maintain compliance with. And so what we've been thinking about is how can we make this easier for our banking partners? And as part of that, we've developed something called Visa Pay. Visa Pay is a payments as a service platform that we have developed specifically for our issuers so that we can embed a series of capabilities into their mobile banking apps with the full customization related to the look and feel of their app. But through that single integration, they will benefit not only from all of the Visa capabilities that we have today, but it's also like a subscription to the future. So as innovation comes along, it's not a case of reworking the entire mobile banking experience, but it's a matter of Visa upgrading the SDK, the payments as a service platform, which sits within the app, so easing the burden and the challenges for many of our issuers to get these market-leading solutions out to their customers.
Great. So it's a simple way in which banks and financial institutions can ultimately roll out a lot of these new innovations through their own existing mobile banking apps that we're providing.
Exactly. And it's about making it easier for our banking partners so that they in turn can get innovation out to the customers as rapidly as possible.
Great. So we've spoken about a lot of products already. When can we expect some of these to come to market? What's the sort of the time frame that you're working to for many of the different areas that you've spoken around today?
So everything that we've discussed today is going to be rolled out, we're going to see being rolled out across the CEMEA region over the next 12 months. So we're starting in many instances in pilot programs that we're doing in different markets, and we will build on those and gradually roll them out to our different issuers across the region, starting in the next 12 months. For some of these programs, there's a lot of upgrades that need to be done to the ecosystem. So the full rollout is going to take a little longer. However, you will begin to see these innovations starting this summer and continuing over the next 12 months.
Excellent. So I'll try and recap on our conversation. So thinking through the innovations, and this is another memory test for me, but we spoke around payment PassKeys and the benefits there in terms of improving digital identity and recognition. We spoke about click to pay and improving that e-commerce experience even at guest checkout with new merchants which we haven't shopped at before. Flex Credentials obviously gives consumers much more choice through one single credential or one single card. We spoke about A2A, Protect for A2A, and how we're improving the security of account-to-account payments. And we spoke about nano merchants and making it easier and simpler and more effective for many of the small business across the CEMEA region to be able to embrace digitization and immediately start accepting digital payments. Have I covered everything?
And we've got Visa Pay.
And of course, Visa Pay.
Payments as a service to make it easier and more digestible for our banking partners. As you see, Dan, there's an awful lot going on. It's a really exciting time. More innovation in the last 3 years than we've seen in the last 50. And the rate of change is increasing. And we're running incredibly fast to lead that change.
Good. Well, I can't wait to see what happens over the next 3 years moving forward as well. But thank you so much for your time today, Godfrey.
Thank you, Dan.
Great. And thank you so much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about many of these exciting innovations which we're bringing across the CEMEA region. If you'd like to find out more, please click on the link below or speak with your Visa representative. Thanks so much and see you next time.